Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
It is episode number 73. Good to be with you here for the first full week of the month of June. Weather Weekly. Good to be with you. I am meteorologist Marcus Bailey from Wish TV in Indianapolis, Indiana. And it is always a joy to have you come along here for the ride. Appreciate you joining the podcast with us this week. Last week, we talked about some historic events that happened in the month of June and looked ahead to the forecast. And I kind of promised that we would talk about one of the more significant weather events that happened in this month here, and it is the largest tornado outbreak, still stands, largest tornado outbreak in the state of Indiana's history in 1990, happened in early June. So we're going to be spending some time talking about that. Just want to give you a quick recap, excuse me, on where we've been last week. Interesting kind of as we rolled through the kind of start of the month, relatively quiet. We did have a little bit of rain that we had midweek. And then the weekend, my goodness, so beautiful here across the state and much of the Midwest. We had numbers into the upper 70s to around 80. Hopefully you were able to get out and enjoy it. It was wonderful. And then we've opened up this new week here so far, pretty active, had some thunderstorms on Monday. What was interesting about Monday, and I'm talking specifically about the 6th, Monday the 6th, had a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. Mainly those were confined into southeastern Indiana down near Cincinnati. Did have a couple of warnings also near the Richmond area, eastern Indiana, and then also in extreme southern Indiana, down along by the Ohio River. Didn't get much in terms of severe weather across the metro area. However, parts of White and Cass County, so that is northwestern portions of central Indiana, picked up an immense amount of rain. There was a very small area that picked up anywhere between 5 to 6 inches of rain in about a 4 to 5 hour span. And so there were water rescues that were having to be done in some of those areas because we just had heavy downpours that just kind of ended up training over the same areas. So pretty significant rain, whereas most of the state picked up anywhere between a quarter to maybe 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. There was a couple of isolated 1 inch reports if you got under a couple of heavy thunderstorms. But yeah, I mean, that one area, it was significant how heavy the rain was. So we still could use a little bit of rain outside of that one area. And we'll get our chances, I think, as we go through the week. And of course, we'll have the forecast, as we always do, coming up at the end of the podcast. But coming up, we want to talk about this historic event that happened 32 years ago last week. 32 years ago, it is the most significant tornado outbreak in the state's history. It is the tornado outbreak of June of 1990. We'll talk about it next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
It is episode number 73. Good to be with you here. So today's subject matter, and I want to take a step back. Probably would have been more appropriate to do this last week, but I want to kind of stay consistent and do the preview that we usually do at the beginning of the month. But we just surpassed the 32nd anniversary of the largest tornado outbreak in Indiana's history. Now, if you're looking in the U.S. history, it doesn't even rank in the top 10. It did when it happened. It did when it happened in 1990, June 2nd. But we have had so many more significant tornado outbreaks since then that it's been knocked out of the top 10 list. But still a significant one nonetheless, and obviously the number one for us here in Indiana. So I went back and looked at some of the papers. So I'm going to read you kind of verbatim exactly what some of the articles were written about in some of these publications here, and kind of how the day unfolded here. It wasn't just active here in Indiana. It was also extremely active for Illinois and Ohio here. So this was kind of the synopsis. And I will go to mention that it was a big day, but the entire month of June for the state and really for the country that year was pretty high in terms of tornadoes. When they wrapped up the month, and just looking at some of the write-ups about that day, that month, they ended up with 329 tornadoes nationally for the month of June, which at that time broke a previous record. In fact, it shattered it. 252 was the previous record set back in June of 1982. And the records go back to 1952 at that point. June state records were set for Colorado with 33 tornadoes. The old record was 31. Indiana had 44 tornadoes. That record still stands. The old record was 30 in 1983. Kentucky with 15 tornadoes. Nebraska 39. And 5 of the June tornadoes were killer tornadoes that ended up happening for the month of June. So the outbreak for what it was basically a 2-day event here. All right. So it was the 2nd and it was the 3rd. It started in Illinois, kind of rolled through Indiana during the late afternoon and early evening hours, and then it picked back up during the day or the morning hours of June 3rd in parts of southwestern Ohio. Central and southern Indiana, for our state specifically, were the hardest hit in terms of the tornado outbreak on the 2nd. So on June 2nd and June 3rd, 1990, the largest outbreak of tornadoes since the super outbreak of April 3rd and 4th of 1974 produced 64 tornadoes in parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio River Valley. The most heavily damaged area was from southeastern Illinois through southern Indiana to southwestern Ohio and north central Kentucky, where several strong to violent tornadoes struck, including 7 of F4 intensity. Again, remember, this was before the enhanced Fujita scale. So no EF, it was just F4. In the 4 lower Ohio River Valley states of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, there were 55 tornadoes, 12 in Illinois, 37 in Indiana, 3 in Ohio, and 9 in Kentucky. So obviously Indiana catching the brunt of all of that with nearly 40 tornadoes. 4 of the Illinois tornadoes crossed the Indiana border. 1 Indiana tornado crossed into Ohio, and another Indiana tornado crossed into Kentucky. The aforementioned 55 tornadoes produced damage paths totaling nearly 500 miles, killed 9 people, 1 in Illinois and 8 in Indiana, and injured over 250. Red Cross surveys of Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky found 313 homes and 141 mobile homes destroyed, and another 892 homes and 173 mobile homes damaged. Hundreds of barns and other farm buildings were also damaged or destroyed. Thousands of trees were uprooted, snapped off at the base, or severely damaged. Indiana was hardest hit. For the state, the 37 tornadoes and 8 deaths made this the largest and most deadly tornado outbreak since the super outbreak of April 3rd, 1974. The event broke Indiana records for most tornadoes in a day at 37. Previous record, as I mentioned, was 21, April 3rd, 1974. Most tornadoes in a month, again, we mentioned that, 44. Previous record was 30 in 1973. And most tornado deaths in June, 8. Previous record was 4 on June 20th, 1942. That's significant. And we've probably mentioned this in numerous podcasts, but in the 90s, our warning process was, it wasn't as good as what it is now. Okay, certainly. The radar that we use, especially on television, not as high res as what we use now. You couldn't really zoom in as much. But the warning process was a little bit more organized. You had a little bit more lead time. A lot of it was probably timing. You heard about how many mobile homes were damaged. That was definitely taken into account because that is not a safe spot. It wasn't then. It still isn't now. And 32 years later. And this did actually hit one of the larger F4 tornadoes did hit a town. And obviously that is going to play a role anytime you have a large tornado in a town. Sometimes if it's large enough, there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much that can protect you, unfortunately, sometimes. So take that all into account as well. This write-up has an excellent kind of breakdown of all of the tornadoes. The longest tornado originated at the Muscatuck River in Indiana, and it was on the ground for nearly 30 miles. I take that back. There was a tornado that started in Illinois. Barnhill Hazleton tornado, Illinois, but did cross into Indiana. That was an F4, 94 miles in length. On the ground. And it was an F4, one fatality with that, and 13 injured with that. The Petersburg tornado was also an F4 on the ground for 13 miles, 60 injured, 6 deaths. That was the big one because it did hit that town, Petersburg, again. So the setup that day. So the surface weather maps for June 2nd at 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. These are both Eastern times. And again, back then it was standard time for the state of Indiana because we had yet to switch over to daylight savings time. Show warm, moist air over the Ohio River Valley. Now, a strong cold front was advancing east into the Midwest. At 2 a.m. Eastern, a convective outlook was issued by the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, now known as the SPC, Storm Prediction Center, stressing the likelihood of a major tornado outbreak by forecasting a very rare high risk for the eastern portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley and the western half of the Ohio Valley this afternoon and evening. The update of this outlook at 10 a.m. continued the high-risk forecast and included the statement: destructive tornadoes are likely with these thunderstorms, so strongly worded public awareness statements are in order today to emphasize this threatening situation. So again, I find that interesting. I mean, again, this was 32 years ago. Technology has advanced so much, but that's something similar that we would see here, and we give all of the kudos to those meteorologists that both work at the Storm Prediction Center and some of the local, what we call WFOs, the offices of the National Weather Service that will use strongly worded language like that in preps for a severe weather outbreak. So they knew it was coming. There that day. Now, by mid-afternoon, a squall line had developed ahead of the cold front over central and southern Illinois. Thunderstorms exploded across east central and southeastern Illinois in the late afternoon, spawning several tornadoes. Several storms raced northeast and east across Indiana during the evening at about 50 miles per hour and continued into southeastern Indiana, southwestern Ohio, and north central Kentucky in the late evening and early morning hours. A total of 10 tornado watches were issued by the NSSFC during the afternoon and evening. All the deaths occurred in tornado watches. The deaths occurred at least 4 hours after watch issuance. So there were at least a heads up in terms of the watches. These watches carried the seldom used phrase, "This is a particularly dangerous situation with a possibility of very damaging tornadoes." So basically it was the equivalent of, and I don't think they used it then, but they used the wording, it was a PDS watch. All right. We've had those, right? We've mentioned some of the significant tornado outbreaks that have happened in recent memory over the last 10 years or so. PDS watch means a particularly particularly dangerous situation. They're extremely rare, but they're used in these types of instances where, not only is severe weather likely, but significant severe weather is likely. Let's see. The 6:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time radar presentation and tracing shows 7 supercells. One supercell which spawned the Dana in Indiana tornadoes generate a family of tornadoes across west central Indiana, including the F2 intensity Crawfordsville, Indiana tornado. At 6:28 p.m., this cell was approximately 15 miles southwest of Crawfordsville. The pendant echo, located near the right rear flank of the storm, was partially manifested in moderate precipitation. Witnesses south and east of Crawfordsville observed moderate to heavy precipitation swirling around the large vortex. So that would be classified essentially as a rain-wrapped tornado. Further upstream, cell C, this is a different cell, produced additional weak F0 and F1 tornadoes near Lebanon and Terhune, Indiana. This storm cell continued to show subtle echo characteristics compared with its neighbors. Supercell D, located 110 kilometers west of Indianapolis, maintained strong classic supercell characteristics as it moved rapidly across west central Indiana. This storm spawned the new Maysville, Indiana tornado, which reached strong F2 intensity. One of the 9 fatalities reported this evening of June 2nd was linked to the tornado about 3 miles northeast of New Maysville, Indiana. Further south, supercell E, located 150 kilometers west-southwest of Indianapolis, weakened as it traveled across west central Indiana. This storm produced a second weak tornado near Fairbanks, Indiana. Weaker convective cells south and east of the parent storm likely inhibited the inflow region of this storm. Supercell F and G, located 150 and 200 kilometers southwest of Indianapolis at 6:28 p.m., spawned several strong tornadoes over parts of southwest and south central Indiana. Both storms displayed nearly classic supercell structure to HP, means heavy precipitation structure, after 8:30 p.m. Pendant echoes were identified near the southern flank of both storms at this time. Supercell F, which spawned the Worthington, Indiana tornado, weakened after 8 p.m. Eastern. In contrast, supercell G maintained quasi-steady state characteristics and vigor through midnight as it moved across south central Indiana. This storm spawned a family of tornadoes, including Montgomery Lagodi tornadoes F3, Bedford, Indiana tornado, and F4, Clear Springs tornado, also an F4, Reading tornado F1, Hayden tornado F2, Holton tornado F2, and the Bright, Indiana tornado, which is an F4. Several tornadoes associated with supercell G after 9 p.m. Eastern were partially obscured by moderate to heavy rainfall. The radar echo pattern of cell G at 6:28 Eastern was one of the nearly classic supercell structures. A well-defined pendant echo and inflow notch located near the southern flank of the storm was noted at this time. The first tornado, Montgomery Lagodi tornado, occurred about 45 minutes after the identification of the pendant echo and supercell structure. There are some incredible photos, by the way. If you want to check this out, you can just Google this paper from the Weather Service of all of these tornadoes. Just incredible damage that was done. They've got one picture here, tornado damage west of Brownstown, Indiana. You can look up Aubrey M. Woods, Seymour, Indiana Daily Tribune. And basically, that also has a picture of the Petersburg, Indiana tornado, essentially destroyed the elementary school on the southeast side of Petersburg, Indiana. The tornado, which caused the damage, F4 at times, killed 7 people, making it Indiana's deadliest tornado since April 3rd of 1974. So pretty significant. And I would go to say also that this this outbreak, and I didn't know it at the time, and I probably haven't known it for many years, but then finally when I kind of put two and two together, I realized it, that this outbreak is what really kind of sparked my interest in meteorology. One, because it terrified me. So we were, in 1990, I would have been 9 years old, and I was going to a Cub Scout camp at, and I'm going to blank on the name. Let me Google search. Just sorry, stand by here. Here we go. It was nicknamed Camp K in Frankton, Indiana. That's Madison County. I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize. Camp Kick-the-Wanoond, I think. So this is in Frankton. So this is a Boy Scout camp, but I was in Cub Scouts then at that point. I was 9 years old. And so we were there for, I believe, 2 or 3 days, and went with my Cub Scout troop that we were based out of Muncie. So it's a short drive, maybe 20 minutes. But I specifically remember, and I think this was my second time going to this camp, but I specifically remember that they were talking to us, the camp counselors, about the severe weather protocol that we needed to take in the event that there was severe weather. Now looking back at, the very strong wording that was taking place, now it makes sense. We were intense. And so they sounded the tornado sirens at Camp K, and we had to go into this massive dining hall. And so, there were several troops. I would guesstimate there was probably at least 100 boys there, if not more, maybe up to 200 boys from various different dens and Cub Scout troops that were there. But I remember we had to, it seemed like we were there for probably 3 hours or so. I think at some point we were under a tornado warning. We didn't have any weather radios or anything weird that was going on. I had no televisions to look at what was going on. All I could see what was going out in the front window. And it was an immense amount of rain and a highly electrical storm. And it was also the first time that I was in a building that was struck by lightning. And that absolutely terrified me to the point that I hid under a table for the rest of the evening. It was instantaneous. You saw the flashlight and bang, clap. Super loud, never seen. And then what I distinctly remember was the smelling of burning. But it was raining so hard that if this building did catch fire briefly, it was put out very quickly by the rain, thankfully. Did not hit inside the building. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I kind of, look, that was 32 years ago. That I do remember at least kind of like the overhang of the roof. I kind of saw maybe a little bit of burnt area and some damage to it, very minor from where the lightning struck. But I remember just a lot of the camp, we couldn't get around because we were flooded. And so we had to kind of limit our activities after that. But I also remember telling the stories like it was legend. You're at camp. Everything's got to be bigger and bolder than what it was. But I remember kind of seeing the first promos, the first time I'd ever seen promos, or at least paid attention to promos at a news station. And it's funny because it's where I work now, that I was probably watching The Price is Right or something back then, but there were promos of then the chief meteorologist, Stan Wood, covering that storm wall to wall. And I remember seeing like this massive cell basically over where we were. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. It looked nasty. It was the nastiest cell I'd ever seen. And so that did terrify me, and I was quite scared of storms kind of at that point going forward. And thanks to my parents, they kind of changed that fear into an interest. They tried to do the same thing with flying and roller coasters with the fear of heights, and that was never going to happen. But they said, look, if you're scared of something, you need to learn more about it. And so I did. And I was obsessed with weather at that point. And so the more I learned about it, the less scared I became during thunderstorms. But I attribute that outbreak day Didn't know it then, but I attribute that outbreak day to where I'm at now in a career, 32 years later, and been working in the field for almost 17 years. So kind of an epic day. Didn't realize what was going on around me. We had very minor damage in the northern Madison County area where we were at during this outbreak. Obviously much worse in southern Indiana, but a significant outbreak, the most significant that we've had in our state's history. Again, that happened 32 years ago last week. No severe weather in the forecast for us, at least anything significant like that in the upcoming forecast. We'll talk about that next here on Weather Weekly. Here's a look at the forecast as we look ahead to the rest of the week here, June 6th and beyond. We still have some more rain chances we got to slide through here through the rest of the week. Looks like we'll have another round of showers and thunderstorms kind of advancing with an area of low pressure on Wednesday. That will bring some scattered thunderstorms for the afternoon and evening hours. There could be a few strong thunderstorms as well, and all modes of severe weather are in play for that event on Wednesday. I don't think it's going to be kind of a widespread issue. Not a lot of ingredients to kind of cause several warnings, but a warning or two certainly could be possible for sure. Thursday looks to be a beautiful day. I've got highs in the upper 70s and lower 80s. The humidity should be relatively low as well. Friday, we'll see a return of showers and thunderstorms to the state with an area of low pressure. The potential there for some pretty heavy rain at times that could linger on into Saturday morning. But right now, I think the weekend looks lovely. Low humidity. Most hours should be dry, and we'll have highs in the upper 70s both Saturday and Sunday. We are starting to see some hints as we head into the next week. So the week of the 13th, that we're going to start dialing up the summer heat a little bit after it's been kind of missing for the last, say, 6-7 days or so. Numbers should be pushing closer to the mid-80s as early as Monday the 13th. The upper 80s on the way for Tuesday the 14th, and I think we'll make a run at 90 degrees the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th of next week. That's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Too early to tell if it's going to be kind of an active pattern here. We've got equal chances in that 8 to 14-day range that we could either go above or below in terms of precip, but pretty strong signals here that we are going to be cranking up the heat, that summer heat back in a big way. So if you're a pool lover and you've been kind of missing out on the high heat the last several days, kind of have to go back to early in the week last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we were hot enough that you can enjoy some pool days. Now you're going to kind of get back to that, but it's going to take the better part of a week to actually get there. But the heat is look like coming as we go into early next week. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. We'd love to hear your suggestions for what you may like to hear on the podcast, whether it's a subject matter or if there's an interview that you would like for us to conduct. Shoot me an email anytime, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also reach me on social media on Twitter @Marcus Bailey and on Facebook and Instagram @Marcus Bailey Weather. Thanks for taking the time here as we roll through the month of June. Appreciate your time while you're here. Make sure you check out all the other great weather other podcasts. I'm the only weather podcast, but other great podcasts that are all part of the All Indiana Podcast Network. Have a great week. Take care, and God bless.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.